It was a quiet Tuesday night, one of those uneventful evenings where everything seemed perfectly ordinary. My wife, Emily, was working late at the hospital, and our two kids were sound asleep in their rooms. I had just finished watching the news and was ready to call it a night. After double checking that the front door was locked, I turned off the lights and headed upstairs. As I walked down the hallway, I felt a strange chill, as if someone had left the window open. I checked both the kids' room, but the windows were shut tight. Shrugging it off, I went to my bedroom and settled into bed with a book. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was startled awake by a noise downstairs. It was a soft, almost inaudible click, like the sound of a door latch being lifted. My heart pounded as I listened intently, trying to determine if I had imagined it. Then I heard it again, clearer this time, the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving across the wooden floor in the living room. My mind raced. Had Emily come home early? No, she would have called or texted. My phone showed no missed calls or messages. I quietly slid out of bed and grabbed a baseball bat I kept in the closet. I moved slowly down the hallway, my senses heightened. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could see a faint light coming from the living room. I took a deep breath and started down, gripping the bat tightly. Halfway down the stairs, I saw him, a man dressed in dark clothing, his face obscured by a grotesque mask. He was rummaging through our belongings, oblivious to my presence. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, my body trembling with fear and anger. I had to protect my family. I crept down the remaining steps, careful not to make a sound. Just as I reached the bottom, a floorboard creaked under my foot. The intruder froze, then turned to face me, the mask's hollow eyes locking into mine. For a moment, we stood there staring at each other. Then he bolted toward the kitchen. I chased after him, but he was fast, too fast. He dashed through the back door, disappearing into the night. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart pounding in my chest. I called 911, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. The police arrived quickly and searched the area, but the intruder was long gone. They found signs of forced entry at the back door, but nothing was taken. The intruder had been looking for something, or maybe just testing his luck. The thought of what could have happened if he had reached my kids' room made me sick to my stomach. That night, I barely slept. Every noise, every shadow seemed like a potential threat. I sat in the living room, the bat still in my hand, watching the door, waiting for the sun to rise. The next day, we installed a new security system and reinforced all the doors and windows. But the sense of security I once felt in my own home was shattered. The memory of that masked intruder haunted me, a constant reminder that sometimes the monsters aren't just in our dreams. They're very real and much closer than we think. I've always loved rainy nights. There's something soothing about the sound of rain tapping against the windows, a rhythmic lullaby that usually helps me drift off to sleep. But on this particular rainy night, sleep was the last thing on my mind. It was a typical Saturday evening. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner and was settling in with a book. The rain had been falling steadily all day, creating a cozy atmosphere inside my small 2-story house. Everything seemed perfect until I heard the first unusual sound, a soft thud coming from the basement. I paused, listening intently. The house was old, prone to making strange noises, but this was different. It sounded like something heavy had been dropped. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was probably just the old water heater or the house settling. But then I heard it again, this time followed by a scraping noise. My heart started to race. I put down my book and stood up, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. It was definitely coming from the basement. I grabbed my phone and a flashlight, feeling a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I slowly made my way to the basement door, which was located in the kitchen. The sound continued, now more distinct, a series of muffled thuds and scrapes, like someone was moving around down there. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the basement door and opened it. The stairs leading down were steep and narrow, and the darkness below seemed to swallow the beam of my flashlight. I took a deep breath and started down, each step creaking under my weight. Halfway down the stairs, I froze. The noise had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I strained my ears, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I reached the bottom of the stairs and swept the flashlight around the room. The basement was cluttered in old furnitures and boxes, everything covered in a thin layer of dust. Nothing seemed out of place. I moved cautiously, checking every corner, but there was no sign of an intruder. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, I noticed something strange. The small window near the ceiling, the one that I always kept locked, was open. A cold draft blew in, sending a shiver down my spine. Someone had been here. I quickly shut and locked the window, my mind racing. I needed to call the police. As I turned to head back upstairs, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang. I ran up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, and tried the doorknob. It was locked from the outside. Panic set in. I banged on the door, shouting for help, but my voice was swallowed by the sound of the rain. My phone had no signal in the basement, leaving me trapped and alone. I forced myself to take deep breaths, trying to stay calm and think clearly. Then I heard it, a slow, deliberate creak of a floorboard above me. Someone was in the house. I pressed my ear against the door, listening as the footsteps moved through the kitchen and into the living room. Whoever it was, they were taking their time, as if searching for something. I scanned the basement for a weapon, anything to defend myself. My eyes landed on a rusty old wrench lying on a shelf. I grabbed it, my hands slick with sweat. The footsteps continued to move through the house, growing closer to the basement door. I backed away, clutching the wrench tightly. The doorknob rattled, and the door slowly creaked open. The flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. I held my breath, ready to swing the wrench at the first sign of movement. A figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the dim light from the kitchen. I could see the glint of something metallic in their hand. My heart raced as I prepared to defend myself, but then the figure stepped into the light, revealing a familiar face. It was my neighbor, Mr. Thompson, holding a spare key. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. I heard shouting and saw the light on in the basement. Relief washed over me, and I lowered the wrench, my legs trembling. I explained what had happened, and he helped me check the house. We found no sign of the intruder, but the open window in the basement was undeniable proof that someone had been there. Mr. Thompson stayed with me until the police arrived. They took my statement and searched the house again, but the intruder was long gone. They promised to keep an eye on the neighborhood, but the sense of safety I once felt in my home was shattered. That night, as I lay in bed, every creak and groan of the house filled me with dread. The rain continued to fall, a constant reminder of the night I once discovered that my sanctuary was not as safe as I once believed. I've always loved my little house at the end of Maple Street. It's a cozy single-story place with a small garden in front and a big backyard. I moved in about a year ago, enjoying the peace and quiet it offered. But one night changed everything, making me question the safety and solitude I once cherished. It was a Friday night and I was home alone. My boyfriend was out of town on a business trip, and I had the house to myself. I decided to have a quiet evening, so I made some popcorn, picked out a movie, and settled onto the couch. It was one of those perfect nights, or so I thought. Around midnight, as the credits rolled on the movie, I started feeling drowsy. I turned off the TV and headed to the kitchen to clean up. That's when I heard it, a faint noise coming from the backyard. It sounded like the gate creaking open. My heart skipped a beat. I had made sure to lock it earlier in the evening. I stood still, straining to hear. The sound of footsteps followed, crunching softly on the gravel path leading to my back door. My first thought was that it could be an animal, but the steps were too heavy and deliberate for that. Grabbing the nearest thing I could find, a heavy frying pan, I moved quickly to the back door. The kitchen light was off, giving me a good view of the backyard through the window without being seen. I peeked through the curtains and saw a dark figure standing near the back door, fiddling with the lock. Panic surged through me. I stepped back, my hands trembling. I fumbled for my phone and called 911, whispering urgently to the operator about the intruder. The dispatcher assured me that the officers were on their way, but I knew it would take a few minutes at least. The doorknob jiggled and I heard the click of the lock being picked. I backed away, my heart pounding so loudly I feared the intruder might hear it. I had to find a place to hide. Moving as silently as I could, I slipped into the pantry and closed the door, praying it wouldn't creak. Through the small gap in the pantry door, I saw the back door swing open. A man stepped inside, dressed in dark clothes with a hood pulled lower over his face. He moved with a chilling confidence, as if he had done this many times before. He started riffling through the kitchen drawers, looking for something, valuables perhaps. My mind raced. What if he tried to search the rest of the house? What if he found me? The minutes felt like hours as I crouched in the pantry, clutching the frying pan. I could hear him moving through the kitchen, opening and closing drawers, his movements calm and methodical. Then I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. The intruder heard them too. He stiffened, glancing towards the front of the house. Without another moment's hesitation, he turned and bolted out the back door, disappearing into the night. I stayed hidden until I heard the police knock on the front door, announcing their arrival. My legs were shaky as I emerged from the pantry and let them in. They searched the house and the yard, but the intruder was long gone. The police took my statement and assured me that they would patrol the area more frequently, but the sense of safety I once felt was shattered. That night, I realized that the peace and quiet of my little house at the end of Maple Street could be deceiving, and every time I hear a creak or a rustle outside, I remember the uninvited guest who slipped so easily into my sanctuary.